Welcome back to Cablevision's Neighborhood Journal as we wrap up our exclusive coverage of the Vanderbilt Cup Races. Let's take a look at more of my interview with Journal's Vanderbilt Cup aficionado Bob Klement to find out what this final chapter has in store. We were talking, as you had just said before, about the crowds. You had mentioned that the crowds always gathered at the turns for the races. Why was that?
There was a phrase that used to turn around in the beginning of the NASCAR days, that the crowds would go to a race and wait for the accidents to happen,
right.
The most exciting part. And that was very true back in those days. The cars themselves, when you hit the turns, the cars, the way they're built, they're very prone to tipping.
Okay.
And so when they hit those turns going at high speed, if you catch a rut wrong or something to that effect, if you overcorrect and oversteer, more often than not, there's going to be an incident.
But that's what people wanted to be. That's what they wanted to see.
That's where they wanted to be. And I think what they really forgot was they're so close to the turns, they wanted to see an accident. And more often than not, they wound up being part of the accident. That was the biggest reason that brought a halt to the whole Vanderbilt Cup races, that the crowds were just uncontrollable.
Here it is, without further ado, the much anticipated final chapter in our coverage of the Vanderbilt Cup races.
On the morning of October 1st, 1910, the finest drivers from the United States and Europe gathered together to compete for the most prestigious award in automobile racing, the Vanderbilt Cup. It would also be the last. Having encountered poor results the previous year with a shift in starting time, the 1910 Vanderbilt Cup race returned to its traditional daybreak start, a move aimed at restoring attendance to levels of years past. Additionally, changes to the race itself were made to increase spectator interest.
The course was smaller. It was only about 12 miles, where they used about 5 miles of the Motor Parkway. What they wanted to do is have as many cars on the course as possible. So in addition to the Vanderbilt Cup race, where in 1910 there were about 32 entries for the race, they ran simultaneous sweepstakes, 2 sweepstake races for smaller cars. So at any given point, there were about 50 cars on the course. This was good for the spectators, but it also caused problems because it caused massive crowding in certain sections of the race, including the grandstand and the curves.
The race begins at 6 a.m., but it doesn't take long for disaster to strike, an omen for the rest of the day.
Harold Stone was driving his Columbia with Matthew Bacon, his mechanician, and they were just finishing the first lap when they approached the New Bridge Road Bridge in East Meadow, and they could not make the turn that was necessary for the bridge. They went through a fence and went down the embankment of the bridge, and the car toppled over and landed on his mechanician, who was almost immediately killed. I think Harold Stone survived it. I think he broke his arm. So right away in the first lap, this race had problems.
With the race quickly evolving into survival of the fittest, Louis Chevrolet inherits the lead on lap 8 until bad luck and misfortune end his day in horrific fashion.
He had a very competitive car. I think it was the Marquette Buick, and he was leading the race for, I think, the first 8 laps. Car started breaking down a little bit. He started trailing. He was second. He was trying to make up speed later on in the race, and he lost control of his car on Old Country Road in Hicksville, hitting a touring car and killing his mechanician, Charles Miller. Fortunately, nobody in the touring car was injured.
Joe Dawson, nicknamed the Indiana Whirlwind, now inherits the lead, followed closely by Jack Fleming and 1909 winner Harry Grant. Fleming's chances quickly disappear when his car blows a tire. Dawson holds a 4-minute lead with 2 laps left when disaster strikes.
Nearing the end of the race in lap 18, it became a very exciting race as Joe Dawson took over the lead. Sure enough, he looks like he's going to win the race until he hits Henry Hagedorn, a spectator who had come on the course. And Joe Dawson, instead of pulling ahead and keep moving, he stops and sees the condition of the spectator who broke two of his legs. The spectator was taken care of by the other people in the crowd. He continued to the race and stopped to his pits to fix his car.
With Dawson in the pits, Harry Grant assumes a 5-minute lead. Like Chevrolet and Dawson before him, Grant seems assured of victory. But less than 12 miles from the finish, problems arise.
He needs to repair his tire. and all of a sudden Dawson's back on the course and in the race. So it's a wild finish there as Harry Grant and his mechanician, frankly, make record time to repair the tire, and it's a nip and tuck to the end, and Harry Grant and Alco Black Beast wins the race by 25 seconds.
Although exciting to see, the newspapers vilify the race, citing the 4 dead and 30 injured as reason to cancel future races. At Krug's Hotel in Mineola, the drivers concur, voicing their displeasure to the Vanderbilt Commission.
The drivers were not willing to drive on the course unless they had better protection. New York State police and the militia were not going to patrol the course, so they really had no other choice but to move the Grand Prix race off of Long Island, and basically it was the end of road racing on Long Island.
William K. Vanderbilt Jr. had a vision for his country, a vision of excellence, a vision of competitiveness, and in 6 short years, that dream became reality. While he was, first and foremost, a racer, never happier than being behind the wheel with the wind in his hair, seeking to tame that next straightaway.
So, kind of a sad ending for the Vanderbilt Cup races, but it wasn't all a wash. There were actually some really good things to come out of these fierce competitions. As we saw in that final segment, the Vanderbilt Cup races, they end on a little bit of a sour note, but as we said, they really did a lot of good things for Long Island. What are some of those things?
Vanderbilt had a dream for America. He had a dream that America could build cars to compete with the great European road racers, and he really wanted to improve the American manufacturers. That he did it on Long Island was just phenomenal for Long Island. It really put the spotlight on Long Island, and you could make an argument that it not only did put Long Island on the map, but it really spurred its growth. In 1904, you had the population of Nassau maybe at 50,000. By the end of these races, it was well over 1 million.
So we really actually owe a lot to William Vanderbilt,
We really do indeed.
I guess, Bob, lastly, you know, we talked about William Vanderbilt this whole time, but what do you have to say? Because you were really such a big part of this whole special.
I turned into the biggest race enthusiast I never thought I would be.
We call you a race nerd.
I'm a race.
Right?
I am certainly. If you want to say I am a Vanderbilt geek, I will wave my flag proudly. I was always been a sucker for history, and the fact that this is Long Island history, and it's really also American history, to boot. It just pulled me right in, and I am just a dedicated fan of the races themselves.
Journal would like to give a special thanks to Bob Klement for all his hard work on these stories. It really was a labor of love for him. And we'd love to know what you thought about our coverage. Email us at journalli@cablevision.com with all your thoughts and questions. Well, thanks so much for watching, and William Vanderbilt and I just want to say goodbye. We'll see you next time.